Good afternoon and welcome to part 2 of this week's episode of 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam. So earlier today, we did an episode about the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and the newest entry into the Hunger Games series, story of what happens to President Snow before he became president of Pan Am. That would have dominated the news cycle of this week had yesterday not happened. The worst parts of fandom have been rewarded once again, and the Snyder Cut is coming to HBO Max. Now, I'm going to say I did not believe that a completed cut of Justice League, as Zack Snyder originally envisioned it, existed, ready to be released. And I did not think we would ever see this come out, because it doesn't make logical sense, and I saw a report from some site saying that, we weren't going to get it. And I was half right. I'm going to concede. I never thought this movie would come out. Because if you think about it, it's not something you want to do. Because Justice League was one of the biggest cinematic failures ever, if you think about it. Because what it is, it was meant to be their Avengers level event. It was meant to be them saying, DC said, we have the same thing, these iconic characters, we bring them all together in this massive movie, it's gonna be fantastic, and everyone's gonna love it, it's gonna make us $1 billion, and then it didn't. It just fizzled out and bombed at the box office. It's one of those things, like, you don't want to keep reminding people of that. Like, Suicide Squad being rebooted 5 years after the last time it came out is a testament to the fact that they're trying to forget all about it as much as they can. Like, the things that the people liked, they kept. They kept Harley Quinn. They kept Harley Quinn. That's it. But they brought in James Gunn, and they went for a different tone, and they were going to, kind of let that happen. Here's the problem with it. I didn't think this was going to happen because it doesn't make sense to remind them of this. It's like if they were to release the Air cut and what Air wanted to do for the Suicide Squad. And part of the reason why Justice League didn't work was the fact that it had a lot of groundwork to do, because for whatever reason they were averse to, doing the groundwork in other movies. Because I've heard, like, Kevin Smith and Mark Bernardin say, they've trained us to be comic book readers with these movies. Like, Marvel trained us to be comic book readers, where it's like, we understand that stuff happened in Spider-Man's movie and in Thor's movie, and even if we didn't get it, we kind of get the sense of what's going on. It's different for the Justice League, because by the time this movie came out, we had Superman's origin, we had an aged Batman who was, grizzled, Dark Knight Returns style, and desensitized with what was happening in Gotham, and he, hated everything for it. So we have that, but we have no introduction to the Flash. The only knowledge anyone has about who the Flash is are people who read the comics, who are familiar with the fact that the Flash runs fast, just from pop culture, people who watch the TV show, or people who watched the TV show in the early 90s that ran for one season. And that's it. No further explanation. Wonder Woman had a movie in between to kind of set her up, but that movie contradicted what we were told in Batman v Superman. Cyborg, people's familiarity with Cyborg is comic book readers and people who watch Teen Titans or Teen Titans Go. And Aquaman has been a joke for as long as he's been a character. Like, to the point where they make James Cameron making an Aquaman movie is what drives the plot of early seasons of Entourage. Because it's just such a ridiculous idea that, like, yeah, sure, why not? And therein lies the issue with what this was. Aquaman should have had the slot that Suicide Squad had. Or The Flash should have had that spot. Or anything should have had that spot that would have set up this movie. Cyborg, even. And then the movie comes out, and the movie has to be cut to 2.5 hours or 2 hours. And herein lies my problem with this movie. We're hearing now that the movie's going to be about 4 hours long, or a mini-series. So, I said this yesterday on Twitter. If the movie were to come out, and it was 4 hours long, that would never be theatrically released. And Deborah Snyder said as much. This movie could never come out in theaters at 4.5 hours long. But here's the thing. Zack Snyder signed on to make a Justice League movie for theatrical release. Yes, you have a vision of how you want it to go. You know what you want to do. As a filmmaker, you know this is the story I want to tell. At the same time, you need to be able to do that within 2.5 hours at max. The only reason we tolerated Endgame being 3 hours, and even that was a stretch, was because it earned that over 20 movies prior telling the story. You're going to tack on another hour to that and then say, like, we're going to sit through this? No, that's something that, is earned. Like, Scorsese, we're okay with The Irishman being 3 hours long because it's Scorsese. Nothing about this should have been 4 hours long. And the thing is, to say, like, oh, well, it's his vision, yes, okay, I get it. But if I'm an executive and someone's telling me I have a 4 hour long script for a Justice League movie, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Okay? I don't care if that's his vision. Okay? This is a business that's designed to make money. And yet, he may have wanted a 4 hour long first movie in a trilogy. Because this is a 3-part Justice League movie, part of a 5-movie arc. Or Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Justice League, Justice League, Justice League. And the first one of the Justice League movies was going to be 4 hours long. Because they didn't set it up. And you know what? Had they let Cyborg get set up in his own movie, had they let The Flash get set up in his own movie before this, we wouldn't have had to waste precious screen time setting up who these characters are. And there wouldn't be any confusion as to how far along in their story they are. Because, like, The Flash is meant to seem like he doesn't really know what he's doing. He's an early hero, yet at the same time, we see him, he's already captured Captain Boomerang, because we knew that from Suicide Squad, because Ezra Miller appears there. We knew he dealt with, there's references to Grodd, Captain Cold, and a bunch of other and Heatwave, at minimum in that scene, where he's introduced. We talked about Gorilla Sign Language. He talked about figure skating because he's got the suit that does he's got the suit that resists cold, and it's like it also resists heat, and it's like very intense figure skating. But all of this, like, this shouldn't have happened. This should not have been a thing. It was like his vision was 4.5 hours. We should let him make the 4.5 hour long movie. No. Because you can bet your ass if someone went to Kevin Feige and said, here's my first cut for the first Avengers movie, it's 4.5 hours long, he'd be like, what the fuck? Cut it down. And the thing is, too, the decision to cut this movie down to 2.5 hours, or 2 hours, should have been made earlier in production, not during production. Because if you look at, like, other movies where this has happened, where they cut it down from 1 part to 2 parts, it's not done at the last possible second. Look at Dark Phoenix, which is originally going to be a 2-part movie coming after Apocalypse, and Apocalypse bombs, like, fuck it, we gotta do 1 part. Then Apocalypse bombs. So, what the hell am I talking about? I'm completely going off on a tangent. So, like, Apocalypse doesn't do well, so they cut it down to 1 movie. That was during pre-production, so they had time to rework the story in a drastic way. So they could basically start from the ground up and say, we're not going to do a 2-part thing, we're going to do 1 part, we still got to make it land. And it still didn't work. And that's basically what we're talking about here. Cutting down a 2-hour-long movie, a 4-hour-long movie to a 2-hour-long movie is the same as taking 2-part movies and saying we're going to do 1 entire movie. That's it. And it's got to be wrapped up in 2 hours. That's what the problem here is. That's why this movie was going to have an issue out of the gate. And the issue is the fact that we kept sitting here and indulging this nonsense for this long is part of the problem. Okay? We're faulting Warner Brothers for not letting him finish the movie when it's not their fault. It's the fault of Zack Snyder for coming to them with a 4-hour-long movie and then being like, alright, cool. And then when the 4-hour-long movie was shot and they're like, alright, can you cut it down to 2? Then it's their fault. I mean, yeah, they shouldn't have let him shoot the 4-hour-long movie to begin with, but that's what all movies do. And Zack should have, as a director, been like, look, I understand things are going to be cut. Like, this whole thing was a mess out of the gate because they were in such a rush to get to the Avengers that they cut out Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man 2 in between. And that's a huge thing you can't just skip over. Because it builds the characters, that way when we get to the team up has emotional resonance and impact. And I just, okay, so the movie's coming, regardless of that fact. The movie's coming. $20 to $30 million are going to be spent to finish this movie up and make it happen. And really all it's going to be about is jerking off the fans. Because they're going to bring in Martian Manhunter, they're going to bring in Green Lantern, they're going to bring in this, they're going to bring in this, they're going to bring in Ryan Choi, they're going to, like, who gives a shit? Honestly. Like, at this point, like, finish the story you meant to tell. And that's it. Like, oh, Darkseid's going to be there. Okay, if the plot is fundamentally the same, which I have a feeling it is, because the way I'm looking at it is, if we're going to shoot a 4-hour-long, 4 hours of story, okay, and then you're trimming it down to 2, you're going to cut out the story arcs that aren't necessarily needed. That's where Kiersey Clemens went. Her Iris West, not needed. Like, when I'm watching a Justice League movie, I shouldn't have, I shouldn't have Henry Allen making an appearance, but sure enough, there's fucking Henry Allen making an appearance in the movie, because they need to set up who the Flash is. But the whole thing, all of that got cut out is going to be added in, and it's like, okay, cool, for a director's cut, that's cool, but the fact that made it into the production anything of this movie is ridiculous. And what we're going to end up doing is we're going to have this thing, we're going to have this really cool, like, cool thing, it's going to look cool, it's like, alright, I get it, you want to do a big event, and it's going to be, but, like, you're adding in Martian Manhunter now. I can promise you that was not in the original script. Okay? Ryan Choi, I think I remember, was there. Like, there's so much that's just kind of added in, and it feels like kind of like afterthoughts added in. Like, he's talking yesterday about how he wanted Supergirl in the movie. It's your fucking movie! Put Supergirl in the movie if you wanted her there. Like, it's obvious they gave you free reign to do whatever the hell you wanted. Like, because otherwise I would have been like, why the hell are you doing... Like, there are so many baffling decisions that happen in this movie that it's obvious there was minimal oversight by the studio. So anyone who says, like, oh, the studio trampled on his vision, I can promise you right now, there is not a single test screening where having Lex Luthor piss in a jar and serve it to a U.S. senator was well received. Like, I can promise you that. I can promise you that there was not a single test screen where Batman v Superman worked. And people resonated. Because I saw someone say it, and they nailed it perfectly. I forgot who it was that said it. I saw someone on Twitter say it. They said that the death of Superman and Batman v Superman does not work because we do not have an attachment to Superman, and because we view Superman as a symbol. It's like the death of Jesus. But not Jesus the man, not Jesus the Son of God, Jesus the symbol. It does not work, and it does not have the correct emotional resonance because of that. And there's no way that movie had that at any point, and the studio was like, fuck it, get rid of it. How the hell does Henry Cavill end up being more charming as the villain of Mission Impossible Fallout than he does as Superman? Like, what? So... And then we have people like, oh, what are we going to get next? And I made a joke about it. It's like, now release Justice League Part 2. But that's going to be the next thing. Release Snyder's Justice League Part 2. And then it's going to be, release the Ayer cut. Release the Kinberg cut. And the thing is, I think, fortunately for us, we're in a very unique situation with Zack Snyder and his Justice League. Because it's kind of the perfect storm that leads to the situation happening. Where we're not going to get this. And it's like, anyone on Twitter who's harassing Joss Whedon, shut the fuck up. Please. Because Joss Whedon didn't want to do that anyway. It's like, he realized it's not his movie. He wasn't happy about it. There wasn't some vast conspiracy theory where he was working with Marvel to sabotage the movie and make it worse. There's no vast conspiracy theory where Jeff Johns is trying to sabotage the movies. Like, but anyway, I don't think that we're going to have another Snyder Cut level thing ever again. If only because the Snyder Cut has a very unique set of circumstances where it happened. Number one, we have a documented case of the director changing on set due to, in this case, a family emergency. So for this to happen, there would need to be two directors, one swapping out for another, where the first director has a documented case of what's happening and all of that. Number two, the director needs to never shut the fuck up. And that's what kind of stopped Simon Kinberg and why there's no movement for the Kinberg cut of Dark Phoenix, where they allegedly reshot the ending in response to Captain Marvel. or anything like that. Because Simon Kinberg's like, I'm the director. Ultimately, the decisions came down to me. I made bad decisions. My movie, I messed up. Zack Snyder couldn't take this laying down. So, I don't understand why this was the hill he wanted to die on when he got another zombie movie coming out. Well, either way, this is the movie that, he decided he wanted to, to push. So, he's got this whole thing. You need to have another vocal director who's vocally saying, this is not my work, and there is another cut available. And there needs to be a company war aspect of it. There needs to be an us versus them mentality. In this case, Marvel versus DC. So really, this can only happen with video games and comic book movies. Very specifically. And it needs to have the perfect set of circumstances where it can happen. Because it's never going to happen with Star Wars or anything like that, where you're not going to get released a JJ cut or anything like that. Because what's ended up happening is people are going to look at it and it's like, there's no alternative. There's no, I want to see this instead of this. Like, if you look at this, it's, I want to see this instead of, Marvel versus DC. People clinging to the DC movies say, oh, I'm not a Marvel fan, I'm a DC fan. There is no, I'm not a Star Wars fan. I mean, you can say I'm not a Star Wars fan, I'm a Star Trek fan, but I've never really seen that rivalry that's been stereotyped in pop culture. I've never physically seen it myself, to be completely honest. I've seen willful indifference toward the other, but I've never seen company wars in the way you get Xbox versus Sony, Nintendo versus Sega in the 90s. But yeah, I just, there's just, and what I said about, giving into the worst of fandom, this is the worst of fandom. The Snyder Cut people, and here's the thing, it's like Comicsgate, it's like the fandom menace. It's like all of these people, they don't disown the bad actors when they should. Like, if you look, if someone, there's a thing going around now about how Comicsgate's recruiting on Stormfront, which is an open white supremacist site. And it's like, okay, but it's like, well, not all of us are neo-Nazis. It's like, okay, then outright say you don't want the neo-Nazis in your group. And it's like, well, no, we don't. We're not going to say that. It's like, okay. And the Snyder Cut, not saying that they're neo-Nazis or anything, I'm saying that the Snyder Cut people, there were people who were militantly for it at the time. People who were saying, no, we need to have this cut of the movie right now. And it's like everything Warner Bros. Would post, and they get spam release, a Snyder Cut release, a Snyder Cut release, a Snyder Cut release, a Snyder Cut. And it's like they posted a tribute to Kobe Bryant. And, it got spammed on there. They announced it yesterday, and they're sore winners about it. Where Joss Whedon tweets, "Hey, go listen to Patton Oswalt's stand-up comedy routine. He's really funny." And his comments section is just full of people like, "Haha, joke's on you. The movie came out," and it's like, go fuck yourself. This reminds me of a line from Fairly Odd Parents where he's like, I forgot who it was that said it. It's not enough for me to win, but someone else needs to lose. That's what this feels like. They not only did they won, they need to rub it in everyone's face that they won. And who cares? You're getting the movie you want. This is what you wanted. You're getting what you want. And it's like a 5-year-old rubbing it in the face of someone else. It's like, oh, like they go into the Marvel fans like, oh, well, we got what we wanted. And it's like, okay, we've been getting what we wanted for 10 years now, so good for you. And this all comes from people who couldn't accept the fact that the movie was bad. And when this movie comes out, and the movie is structurally the same movie, with added scenes added on for added context, which will improve the movie, don't get me wrong, that will improve the movie. But the deep structural problems that exist with this movie, and what the plan was going forward, are not going to be resolved by what's going on with a Snyder Cut. Because had they done Suicide Squad with the mother box, would have made a lot more sense. It would have helped out telling the story here, because it would alleviate some of the narrative strain that lives on the shoulders of Justice League. And don't direct hate at anyone over this. That is ridiculous. So yeah. So we'll wrap up there for today. And look, if you're happy about the Snyder Cut happening, I'm going to watch the movie. That's been my stance on the Snyder Cut since this has happened. I'm not rooting for it. I'm not rooting against it. If the movie comes out and I'm, and when it comes out, I'll watch it. If it doesn't come out, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. It happens. It doesn't. Whatever. And this isn't the first time we've been wrong on the show. I was going through old files of old show notes from earlier episodes, and there was one where I talked about how Benicio del Toro was definitely playing, Boba Fett's son. He was playing someone named Vikram Fett. We're talking about how I went on the record when the second Wolverine trailer, when the first Wolverine trailer, the second Logan trailer dropped, and I was like, I don't think this movie's going to be very good. We can admit we were wrong. I was wrong. I thought this movie would never come out. I mean, the movie isn't, done, like Zack Snyder's been saying for the last 3 years. The movie's done, completed CGI's done, voiceover work's done, everything's done. Because if it was done, they wouldn't pay $20 million to finish it. But, whatever. You know what? Let it happen. Whatever. Let's just see the movie and then never hear about this again. Literally, that's all I want, is to never have to talk about the fucking Zack Snyder Cut of Justice League again. And ideally, that's what Warner Bros. Would want, too. They'd want the new movies to be able to stand on their own merits without having to look back at Justice League. But I guess that they're very confident in this movie being done well. I don't think the movie's going to hit the mythical proportion that everyone's making it out to be. I don't think it's even going to hit Infinity War or Endgame level quality. But, oh, well, Darkseid's there, so I guess it's fine then. And with that, we'll be back next week with a regularly scheduled episode with a regular movie review. We just had to adjust things this week because of the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and we'll be back next week with an actual movie review. We're going to do the way back next week, so until then, have a great rest of your week.